Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talking Nets, episode 64, like Nintendo 64. Let the games begin. We got a special guest on the pod today, my guy, Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. Now, before I intro Brandon, Mr. Scoop B, you might have seen him on Twitter. You might have seen him on TV. I've seen him in a few different clips on TV, but I ran into this guy in real life last year. I was doing some work with the company called Transition SC. He came into the meeting room. I think he was representing a rapper. I can't remember the guy's name, but I'm like, where do I know this guy from? What's the guy's name?
Gary Bonds.
Yes. And I'm like, yo, I seen this guy somewhere before. So I followed him and, I watched him and watched his moves. You see him on NBA Twitter. And I was like, yo, bro, we got to bring you on the pod this week. This is the week of the rumors, of the scoops. Let me introduce none other than Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. What up, bro?
What's going on? How y'all doing?
Hey, all good out here. Nets land, Nets fans. We in dreamland, hoping that the dream lands. Hudson, how you doing, bro?
Man, I'm doing phenomenal. Nets fans are on cloud 9, 10, 11, all of them. Oh, my God. Nets Twitter is the place to be. It seems like NBA Twitter has become Nets Twitter with all these rumors, with everything shaken up. It wasn't too long ago, we were thinking, Drew Holiday, Aaron Gordon, who are the Nets going to bring in? Who's going to be that third star? And then we're talking last episode, James Harden, a little discontent. Maybe he's going to go to Philly. What's going to break there? Hope he doesn't go there. See what he can do with Russell Westbrook. Flash forward to today, yesterday, the day before, and he's on his way out looking at the Nets. Russell Westbrook is on his way out looking anywhere that'll take him. And here we are, Nets fans, Nets Twitter, NBA fans, NBA Twitter, all eyes on Brooklyn, all eyes on Houston, seeing if the Nets are going to build, potentially the greatest super team of all time, KD, Kyrie, and James Harden.
Man, what a time to be alive. And I love it. I love looking at Twitter, looking at the alerts, seeing the Woj bombs, the Shams bombs,
the Pooch bombs,
the Scoop bombs. Let's throw it to my guy, Mr. Scoop B. Scoop B, tell the people where you from, what you do, why you are who you are, and what you're thinking now. Right now, we're going into the NBA draft tomorrow. Obviously, the rumor mill is going crazy, and I'm sure you're busy and you got a lot of people hitting your phone. So give us some background on yourself, what you do, and, what you've been working on this week.
I'm a senior writer at Heavy.com, host the Scoopy Radio podcast, which garnered, I think, 2.5 or 3 million streams last year, independently produced. I also have a digital show called Heavy Live with Scoop B. We've had everybody from the porn star Lisa Ann to Stephon Marbury to Jeff Van Gundy, myriad of people on the show. But really and truly, I've been in the game a long time. I started in the business at 12 with the then New Jersey Nets. I had a radio show for 2 years with Evan Roberts over at WFAN now, as well as Nets legend Albert King, and Chris Carino executive produced it. So I've been around a long time. I am a mutt. I split time. I'm originally from Northern New Jersey, but I split time between Northern New Jersey and New York City. I grew up in both. Keith, I met you a while back, and like here, like there, in the DM on Instagram talking, and I'm glad to tap in with you guys. I've broken some stories over the last couple of years just related to the Lakers. I broke yesterday that the Nets, or rather that James Harden did formally request a trade from the Rockets, and some of the other things that were going on with Houston over the last couple of days. So, man, it's a busy time. Yesterday, I literally had about 3 hours of sleep, and kind of getting into the thick of things. I'm enjoying it. I'll never complain, but I'm pacing myself and looking toward Friday.
Dedication to the craft.
Of course, it's sources season, so we had to bring in one of those sources. And there's a legendary clip of a young Scoop B on NBA Inside Stuff, and he shows you back then, Like he said, he's been in the game for a while. I got to find the clip, and I'll put it out on Talking Nets. He shows you he's been in the game since he was a little kid, and there's some New Jersey Nets ties. So we'll definitely get into that on our social media. But we got to get into the pod. Let's kick off the first segment. What's new? Talking NBA news, NBA rumors. And obviously the first one, Scoop mentioned the Lakers. The Lakers are not playing around. The Lakers were the first ones to make a move. They go and get Dennis Schroeder, and they basically let the rest of the league know, hey, we're not resting. We just won, and we're trying to go back to back. What were you guys thinking when you saw the Dennis Schroeder news break? And it's like, wow, the Lakers are the first ones to make a move?
No, it wasn't really surprising, specifically because you knew that there are certain guys on that Lakers team who have raised their value. Rajon Rondo could command a guaranteed 2-year deal for $15 million with the Atlanta Hawks, and that gives him some flexibility, but also in a mentorship role, kind of like picking up where Vince Carter left off at, now retired. You look at it from that perspective, the Clippers will be buyers in that market as well. But I think Rondo is transitioning, into that coaching role. So it wasn't really a surprise. I feel like there are some things about Dennis Schroeder that do remind me of Rajon Rondo, besides just having big hands. If you look at Dennis Schroeder from the perspective of the catch and shoot, Dennis Schroeder last season averaged 31. He totaled. On the catch and shoot, he shot 41% from downtown in comparison to Danny Green's 36%. Me personally, I like Danny Green. I know Danny Green has always been cool with me, but I do think that there has been a lot of Danny Green slander thrown at him, and I think people have taken it a bit too far. Specifically, when this guy is a 3-time champion, and I'd love to see how people respond in certain situations. As professional athletes, I'd like them to see them play one game, let alone a whole year, a whole season. But that's another story for a different day. Danny Green is a member of the Thunder. It's likely that he will not start the season as a member of the Thunder. It's likely that a contender will get him, particularly on an expiring contract. You look at the Thunder; they have a lot of packages where they have Steven Adams as well as Danny Green, and I know that the Thunder have a lot of assets that they can generate to make some things happen. So yeah, I think that the Schroeder trade didn't surprise me, only because the Lakers get someone younger if they don't retain Rajon Rondo, and they're not done. I do think that they are in the hunt to find a way to get DeMar DeRozan, but it has to be the right fit. There'll probably have to be some signing trades. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope definitely upgraded his value. Would be surprised, although I think the Lakers will likely sign him. If a signing trade were to happen, it wouldn't really surprise me either. I know San Antonio's been a little too quiet.
Makes total sense to me. The Lakers know that the competition is heating up. They're not going to be able to roll to another finals championship. They're not going to be able to do what they did this year in the bubble. They have to make moves. They got to grow. But it makes me look at the Thunder, and my God, the Thunder are collecting draft picks like they're Dragon Balls. They are going to own all of the draft picks just in the future. I love that energy. I think they're hopping on the rebuild bandwagon. Obviously, we're going to talk about one other notable trade that they made, to say the least. And they're moving towards that rebuild bandwagon, and I think they're doing it the right way. I think they're collecting the draft picks. They know exactly how to build. They've done it before. They will do it again. They thought this past season was going to be a rebuilding year, a building year. And now here they are, fully embracing the rebuild. And Keith, I'll throw it right back to you to introduce their next move.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things you guys said that I want to hit on. One, shout out to Danny Green, Rock fam. When I worked at Rock Nation, I met Danny Green, and he came in humble. Everybody in the building wanted to see the guy. He came in humble. He worked with the social team, did a couple quick videos for us. So I think I might have said on Talking Nets, when I saw the slander he was getting and the hate that he was getting, I'm like, yo, this is not right. Like, these people are coming at his neck in a whole other kind of way. So shout out to Danny. He's a guy that has, 3 rings? He's a guy that's going to –
3 rings, 3 cities.
Yep.
Yeah, like he's a guy that when his career is done, and then you even looking back at UNC, when his career is done, people are going to put a lot of respect on his name. So I wasn't really feeling that when I saw that this year, especially when you get to meet a guy, shake his hand, and see him in person. But yeah, talking about the Lakers, right? I don't think the Lakers are done. I think the Lakers are looking for any opportunity to improve. And then, going back to OKC, we got to say Sam Presti, right? We got to throw out the name Sam Presti. I have a tweet where it says OKC turned Russell Westbrook into Chris Paul, a 2024 first-round pick, 2026 first-round pick swaps in 2021 and 2025. Chris Paul turns into Kelly Oubre, Ricky Rubio, Ty Jerome. You guys know, like, this guy is making something out of nothing over there, and we all saw what the Thunder were able to do in the bubble. You got to give him his props. So with all of this going on, I give him his props. And the next trade that we're going to talk about with OKC is Chris Paul. Chris Paul now is with the Suns. Last week, as soon as those rumors came out, I'm like, yo, I like this trade. They got to get that done for D-Book and those guys out there. Man, what are you guys thinking about Chris Paul? I think Chris Paul is 35. I think he's got at least another 2-3 years in the tank. And I think he immediately makes an impact on the Suns team that was fighting to get into the playoffs in the bubble. I think next year he puts the Suns into the playoffs. What are you guys thinking about the Suns and that Chris Paul deal?
Yeah, I think instantly they become a contender, or at least a team that, went to the bubble this year. Devin Booker showed out, improved. I think that it's really going to impact DeAndre Ayton significantly. I mean, when you look at a guy who was a hybrid big man, I think when you look at DeAndre Ayton, there are parts of his game. He reminds me of a younger Joel Embiid, particularly because he can put the ball on the floor, get to the basket, face up some, back up, and hit a 16-footer and extend it a little bit beyond. But, in addition to that, I do genuinely think that, I use this analogy often. I've been using it a lot. When you look at Chris Paul, I hear a lot of black women say, I want Erykah Badu to deliver my baby, right? So I'm gonna use an analogy. So when you do that type of birth, it's a water birth, et cetera, and they're called a doula. I guess the person who makes sure that the woman or the woman who's carrying, obviously the woman carries the baby, the woman carrying the baby is at her best. And I look at Chris Paul in the same comparison. When you look at the fact that he went to Oklahoma City, he had a bunch of young guys on the team. He was the doula of the NBA because he was able to, bring a team that nobody had high expectations for to the playoffs. And you look at guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and others who, who are already good. We're all-team first, all-rookie team during his time with the Clippers, but, was genuinely able to, make some things happen on, this season alongside Chris Paul. So now you look at Chris Paul and his impact there, and now in Phoenix, he takes it to another level in that regard. So that dual analogy, I'm going to continue to use that. I think that would have been the case, if he were a member of the Knicks or where he traded to the Knicks. And I think the same thing will happen with Russell Westbrook. I think actually Russell Westbrook will be in a Chris Paul year this past season if he goes to either the Charlotte Hornets or the New York Knicks. So I think that dual analogy, keep that in your mind, Hudson. Doula, that's the guy, that's the OG that's able to get the youth movement moving in basketball. That's what Chris Paul will do with Phoenix.
Man, we know Scoopy because he's got the nickname. He brings the scoops, but did you know he brings the natural birth analogies? No, you did not, but now you do. But I'm absolutely looking at, just like Scoop said, DeAndre Ayton, his development is going to be absolutely improved because of this acquisition. I think that's huge for them. I think it's a awesome move for them, the Suns, to make in order to see if they can, keep Devin Booker in town. I know it's going to be tough. I know he wants to reunite with some of his boys from his draft class, but it's something that they have a shot of doing now. Certainly that they can, transform this into some playoff success. Definitely makes the West a lot more interesting. But I got to go back to what Keith said about the Thunder. The Thunder they're building, they're rebuilding, and they're doing it quick and they're doing it efficiently. Yes. And as a Nets fan, we saw what you can do without draft picks when you have a good GM. Well, they have a GM who can do it without draft picks, but they're doing it with draft picks, and they've got a lot of them. And especially a player like Jalen Lekeck, he's someone that I look at as a young guy. He excites me a lot, and I think they're going to be able to do a lot of things. They have a lot of potential on that team, and they just brought up a new coach, a G League guy, a developmental guy. I think it's going to be absolutely huge for them in the future for them to be able to turn this rebuild around quick and turn that team back into the perennial powerhouse that they have been, throughout this past decade.
Yeah, man, it's awesome when you see teams that are not going through rebuilds, they're just going through a reload. Like they are erasing what they were competitive with, what we knew them for, let's say the last 10 years, the guys we knew them for, and they're still going to be competitive and they're just going to reload. It's not going to be a rebuild where you see them fall off the map. They're just going to reload with talent. And, hats off to Sam Presti. Shit, hats off to Chris Paul. I think the phrase is something like high tide raises all ships. He is the high tide that will raise all ships. And when I say raise all ships, I mean raise these guys' games. You saw what he did with the Thunder and some of those young guys and what he got out of them. I expect us to see more of the same out in Phoenix. So, I don't know if Chris Paul's he's hunting for a ring. He's getting up there in age. I don't know if he's going to win a ring with the Suns, but expect the Suns to be better than they were, to be competitive and actually get into the playoffs this next coming season. Also, this next coming season, talking about a playoff team and talking about a team that got better. Nets fans, talking Nets fam, we've spoken on Drew Holiday plenty on this podcast. It is official. The Bucks got him. And Drew Holiday was traded for Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, 3 first-round picks, 2 future draft swaps. And the Bucks are trying to compete, man, and they're doing what they got to do. They're all in to keep Giannis in Milwaukee. Milwaukee is not the greatest place to live, not the greatest place to be, but the Milwaukee Brass bring in Drew Holiday, one of the best defenders in the league, a guy that Nets fans were eyeing. What do you guys think about this move, and do you think this automatically makes the Bucks better? One of the favorites in the East. I will start first and say I love the move. I love that it got done so that we as Nets fans don't have to talk about it anymore, but I don't think it immediately makes the Bucks that much better. That's just my thoughts on it.
I think that the Bucks are still trying to find a way to move the Chris Middleton contract. And what I'll tell you is, the Drew Holiday move was expected. I know that the 76ers, the Warriors, and the Bucks were on that list, as well as the Brooklyn Nets. We're a list of teams that had interest in Drew Holiday, and he's one of those guys. I won't quite call him a doula, Keith, but what I'll say is I do think that he is a guy that, I put him in the same category as like a Terrell Brandon or an Andre Miller, a guy that, is a silent assassin that doesn't get the praise of your household name, but your household name, a player knows who he is. Yeah. He's the go-to. And so I think, with that being said, Drew Holiday is a good fit, and then he returns back to the East. He was drafted by the 76ers. So I like the move, but for some reason I don't think that the Bucks are done. They're going to do some minor things to perhaps make some trades, to make some more trades. So potentially look out for that.
The Bucks are on the move, and they certainly didn't get him easy. For a couple of minutes there, when the trade broke last night, there were no draft picks attached to it when it first broke. When Twitter first saw the trade, they just saw the player names. And we were like, oh, okay, that's a fantastic move. And Nets fans, I know, were thinking, oh, was he that cheap? We could get him that easy? And then come the draft picks.
Yeah.
And then come the draft picks. And there was, goddamn, a lot of draft picks. We've seen teams mortgage their futures on current success. But boy, it gives me 2 thoughts. It gives me a thought that there's something that we don't know about the Giannis extension situation, and my guess is that it's moving towards he's going to resign, because it's hard to imagine they would mortgage their future that much without thinking that. And second, it makes me think that the James Harden rumors might have spooked them a little bit, thinking that, oh, the Nets are going to build that big 3. We got to do something now, because if we weren't good enough in the playoffs last year, what are we going to do when the Nets are running it back with number 7, 11, and 13?
Well, I'll add to the equation about 7, 11, and 13. While it's believed that the Nets are the front runner, the Sixers are sleepers. And to be honest with you, I just tweeted this on Twitter about 18 minutes ago. The Boston Celtics are also a dark horse. If the Philadelphia 76ers and the Nets don't offer something to Houston's liking, and that they're trying to flip Kemba Walker and Gordon Hayward for picks and young assets that would appeal to Houston frantically. So, there's a chance that if they're able to pull something off, they're able to make that happen as well. So they'll be looking out for that as well. But I do think that the Nets are the front runner. But here's the question: are the Nets going to be able to do that without moving Kyrie Irving? I know that there has been some rumblings about that. But what I'll say to you is this: Kyrie does like it in Brooklyn. Him native of West Orange, New Jersey, he played his tail off this past season, and obviously there would be Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert would have to be involved in the deal, as well as Jarrett Allen. And I know that the Nets are looking at I know the Nets are looking at Serge Ibaka as well. I know that there's mutual interest there. Sean Devaney, my colleague at Heavy.com, reported, I think it was last week or the week before. These days are all jumbled together, but reported that the Lakers have some interest in Ibaka as well. So I don't know mathematically how that would work, but based upon what I've been told directly, Ibaka does have interest in Brooklyn. But I think that when you look at the Eastern Conference at large, I think that anything that the Bucks do, I mean, this was supposed to be their year in the Eastern Conference, and along came the Miami Heat to a national audience.
Yep.
Those who watch basketball already knew what the Heat could do, but for those who maybe, I don't like to use the word casual because that's a curse word on Twitter, but those who kind of watch basketball, I'll say, they, the Miami Heat were a team that, they began to pay attention to more so. So, when I look at the Eastern Conference, even Philadelphia, you bring in Doc Rivers, you have Embiid, you have Simmons for now. You have some of those pieces. I think the Eastern Conference is so very competitive, and but the Western Conference, man, the West is still the wild, wild West. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Suns, a lot of competition.
The Warriors.
The Warriors have pretty much been off a whole year.
They're trying to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to cut in here. You mentioned the media's favorite player to hate there for a second, Kyrie Irving.
Mm-hmm.
There's been some, let's call it, reports of questionable validity that have said that he is not in favor of a Harden trade. I saw you came out on Twitter and you said that sources say the opposite, that is false. So, just talking to our audience who may not have seen that tweet, what kind of credence do you give to these reports?
From the way that I read the reports, it was that he did not get along with Harden. Did I mishear what was said? Because my tweet was that he doesn't get along with James Harden, not the portion that he did not welcome the trade.
I've seen both, but Twitter is a wild, wild west right now. It could be either, but regardless, do you think that there is, a spot for Harden in terms of Kyrie Irving and him playing together, and is that a non-starter, non-story?
I mean, I think it's a non-story. If you've paid attention to my reporting, I'm pretty tuned into what goes on with Kai, and I think that Kai is very misunderstood. I think Kai has also been injured, and I think he has to put up or shut up this year. I'm hopeful that he'll put up. I think that he's not given the respect that some other point guards are due, because I think Kai speaks his mind. And I think that anytime anything with Kyrie comes about, it gets click-worthy or popular based upon just the fact that it's anti-Kyrie. Some of that stuff has a lot to do with the world is not round, and some of it has to do with his belief on Thanksgiving.
Celtics fans, salty still.
So, I mean, some of that stuff I think was induced by him, but I think some of that stuff is people's perception of him rather than what he actually said. And I think it depends on who you ask. I know who I asked, and I know that Kai and James Harden are good friends. They were on the FIBA Olympic team.
Right. USA basketball guys.
In 2014, they won a championship together. When they got the gold medal, they did the Bobby Shmurda dance. There's a lot there. Kevin, of course, Kevin and James Harden were on a Thunder team that made it to the finals and lost to a much more seasoned, I won't say more talented, I'll say a more seasoned
veterans,
team. I've told this story in a couple of different shows. I know that I spent some time in Oklahoma, both in Tulsa and Oklahoma City last summer. I was with Russell Westbrook the day he got traded when his best friend had a comedy show and basically just learned a lot of the landscape of the Oklahoma, I don't want to say greater Oklahoma area. I just learned a lot while I was there. And one of the things that I learned from just talking to various people was the regret that James Harden and Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant had, that they weren't able to win a championship in 2012. Yeah. And they were young. I mean, a lot of them guys were hanging out and partying in Miami and then playing in games the next day. I think that Serge Ibaka was on that team too. I think they're older. They want to kind of go in and right that ship. Kevin has gone on and won championships with the Warriors. James Harden is not. And you really sit and you think about Oklahoma, a couple $1 million short of getting what he wanted. He would have stayed. Maybe we would be having this conversation right now. But it's a lot to consider. It's a lot to ponder. But I think that Kevin and Kyrie were brought in to be major recruiters in this situation. And the thing is, even if they don't get Kevin or even if they don't get James Harden, they're still a good team.
Right. We're getting greedy now as Nets fans. We want Harden. But even if we don't land Harden, we're good money, and we should be looked at as one of the top teams in the East, along with the Bucks. With this Bucks deal with Drew Holiday and the Pelicans, I said so much about Presti. I also have to give some credit to Trajan Langdon, David Griffin, and what they're doing over there in New Orleans, right? They turned AD and Drew Holiday into Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, 7 first-round picks, 1 second-round pick, and 4 pick swaps. So similar to how OKC is doing their thing, obviously they were in it this year and the Pelicans were not. Look out for the Pelicans. Obviously they got Zion, but they got a lot of young guys also there. B.I., Lonzo, Josh, and then they're bringing in some veterans now. They're going to figure out how to compete and how to win. And then the Bucks, they're trying to get better too, right? They also signed, what's his name? Bogdan Bogdanovic. So don't want to leave that out. So they did the Drew Holiday move, but don't let it, pass by that they also went and did a deal, a sign and trade for Bogdanovic. And they are trying to change this team around Giannis, and they are trying to stay at the top of the East because, to be honest, this past year was a letdown. They were the favorites to go to the championship and potentially beat LeBron, and they didn't even get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
We'll see.
So I know you got a hard out. You got a minute, one more minute, or no time to talk Robert Covington and Trevor Ariza. I know you got a lot going on.
I got a minute. Talk to me.
So Robert Covington, I was joking right before we got on here because I went to sleep early last night at 10:30 and I woke up this morning at 6:30 and people are talking Harden, Nets, who's in the package, who's in the trade. And I think someone put Harden and Ben McLemore, and I was like, they can keep Ben. Send PJ or send Rocco. And then someone's like, Rocco's not there anymore. And I'm like, I type in real fast, Robert Covington. And I'm like, damn, he got traded this morning or late last night while I was asleep. Yeah, he gets traded for Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza, you guys know, on the Blazers, sat out the bubble. He had some things going on. But what do you guys think about this deal and this move? I feel like everybody likes and respects Robert Covington.
Definitely. I think he's likable. Defensive stopper. I watched him a lot during his time in Philadelphia. I went to school out in that area and, still pay attention to what's going on in that area. But I like Robert Covington. I like Trevor Ariza. I know Trevor and his issues with the Blazers towards the end. He didn't even play in the bubble because of his son and spending time and because he had his concerns about COVID. But, yeah, I like the move. I thought it was a great move.
Hudson?
Seems like a steal. Seems like a steal, but I won't go too in depth. I don't want to hold Scoop past his 1 minute that he so generously granted us.
Yeah, well, all right, cool. We'll wrap it up right now, and we'll say goodbye to Scoop. Appreciate you coming on Talking Nets. We'll get this out, and we'll clip this up. And for the listeners listening right now, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll do What's Nets, talking specifically about your Brooklyn Nets. What's next? Talking more about the NBA draft in the week ahead. And then we got a special segment at the end we're going to wrap up with. Stay tuned. We're coming right back. Talking Nets.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Brandon Robinson. I'm going to take you behind the scenes of my show, New Jersey Nets Slamming Planet. Follow me.
Shiva!
I got the chance to talk with Sam Cassell. He was one of the top players on my list to interview. Mr. Cassell, if you would allow me to pick your brain for a minute.
He's young, but he's not afraid. He gets straight to his questions, and I like that.
You don't expect a kid to look you right in the eye and ask you these questions and be totally serious.
Right back at it, Talking Nets, episode 64. What you just heard was Brandon Scoop B. Robinson joining us for our segment, What's New, talking NBA news, rumors. That was super cool. I'm glad I met him in real life, and then that gave me a little leverage to bring him on the pod. We're going to work on bringing more guests in and different insiders and stuff, because at the end of the day, you know, someone this morning said to me, they're like, yo, you're an expert on this. You're the expert on all this. And I'm like, I'm not an expert. I'm just a fan, and I'm not a casual fan. Scoop B said something about how the word casual is like a curse word on Twitter because no one wants to be called a casual fan. I'm not a casual fan. Like, I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, but I'm not an analyst. Like, I didn't play in college and then, like, go learn deep about the game and make connections with players and coaches. None of that. I'm a fan. Hudson's a fan. This is Talking Nets for the fans. And now we want to get right into What's Nets. Talking Nets, man. It took us half an hour to get into Nets stuff on Talking Nets, but that's fine because we're doing 2 episodes this week. This episode is coming out on Wednesday. It's not an NBA draft preview. We will do another episode that will come out on Thursday, which will be more of like a draft reaction episode. So let's get into it, Hudson, with What's Nets. I was pleasantly surprised Monday to hear the news. One, John and Musa, who I always call DAZN, like DAZN, like DAZN, the streaming platform. One, John and Musa traded to the Bucks for Bruce Brown. What? And a 2021 second-round pick. This came out of the nowhere, RKO, but you love to see it. Hudson, I know you wanted to talk about this, so I'll pass it right to you.
This is my favorite move that I've seen Sean Marks make. That's not, signing KD and Kyrie. This is the kind of movie that shows you what he's all about. He took John and Musa, 21, first-round pick, hadn't been able to do much in the bubble, and a second-round pick, and sent that over to Bruce Brown. And I know a lot of Nets Twitter was saying, who's Bruce Brown? He's a guy in the Pistons. He played a little bit. He torched the Nets when we played them actually last season. But what's he all about? What's he all about? So as soon as I saw this trade, this is bright and early in the morning, about 8:30 in the morning, this trade breaks. I get right on the research, and I see, okay, this is a huge move. This is a phenomenal move, because what the Nets did was they saved $400,000, as well as like $700,000, $900,000 in a trade exception with this move. They got rid of John and Musa, who is not going to be able to develop in Brooklyn. He's just not. He's not going to get the time. He didn't even get the time in the bubble when the Nets didn't have 75, 80% of their team. If he's not going to get the time then, he's certainly not going to get the time with at least KD and Kyrie on the floor, right? So we send him out over into a good situation, a situation where he's going to get playing time as a 21-year-old. But we get back Bruce Brown, 24 years old, Miami product. And what this man is a phenomenal defender. Mm-hmm. Nets Twitter was all about Drew Holiday being such a great defender. We need to get Drew Holiday. Bruce Brown grades out as good, at least, as Drew Holiday, and actually better at defending the post. Bruce Brown is 6'4". He can go, post up defense against big men, and he does well. He grades out high. He has fine offensive upside. He can throw it down a little bit. He averaged like about 10 points a game. Now he's moving into his 3rd season. He was a second-round pick, and he's got his feet under him. He knows what he's doing. He's going to be a extremely important rotation piece. He is going to be able to slot in crunch time and be that defensive guard that Nets fans have been complaining about not having for a long, long time. I put out a highlight compilation of him. First highlight is a dunk. Sure, fine, amazing. Second highlight, big block.
Mm-hmm.
It's a chase down block on Damian Lillard. This man is a defensive machine. He is one of the best defenders in the league. As a guard, he is one of the best defenders in the league. I can't stress this to you enough. He is not a household name, but he is huge. This is a huge acquisition for the Brooklyn Nets, and they did it for essentially nothing. And, I'll let Keith speak on this a little bit, but some of the important parts are, first off, we get cheaper, which gives us a little more flexibility, not a lot, but a little more flexibility, about $500,000 worth of flexibility, which can be the difference in some cases. I mean, we talk about, James Harden turning down a $50 million deal. $500,000 is still a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I'll let you hear.
It's just, I love Sean Marks, bro. And Marks we trust because while, I talked about the Lakers aren't playing and the Lakers coming out and making a move. This is a move to show that Sean Marks isn't just worried about on the court. He's going all the way to the end of the bench. Can we get better? How can we improve? I don't know who was checking on John and Musa. I heard the Pacers were. I guess there was nothing there. But for us to basically throw Musa and a 2021 second-round pick, save money, and bring in a dog like this, I'm like,
genius.
Sean Marks strikes
genius
again.
Move. And
Marksman.
he's got other good qualities. You just said marksman. Guess what Bruce Brown does? He shot 42% from catch and shoot corner threes.
Yeah.
Think about how many of those he's going to be able to hit with these players on the court. And just for fun, a little stat that I like to throw out, I threw out on Twitter, got a lot of reactions. We're talking a lot about James Harden, the player with the most consistent defensive record against James Harden. Bruce Brown Jr. 0 for 10 one time, 4 for 20 another time.
Hey,
Sean Marks is
he's working.
the best GM in the NBA. I don't know. Sounds true to me. Sounds true to me.
He's doing what we need to be done. And man, here's what they call in show business a transition. Getting rid of Zan and Musa frees up number 13 for James Harden. Who? James Harden cooking on him. James Harden couldn't cook on Bruce Brown. So you know what? When James Harden saw, oh, wait, they got Bruce on the team. Oh, I need to go to Brooklyn. I'm going with Brooklyn. And now all of these James Harden rumors start popping up right after the Musa trade. I have in the notes, I'm like, okay, the rumors were real, and then they weren't. And then this happened, and then they weren't. And for me, I'm following all this, and it's like, okay, it's just a rumor. It's rumor mill. It's rumor season. It's the NBA fall, a.k.a. the NBA summer. November is now July. I don't believe all of this. But then, I'm thinking about the Rockets, and we already spoke on Robert Covington getting up out of there. I heard rumblings about Austin Rivers not wanting to be there. PJ Tucker felt like he was worth more money than he is getting. Russell Westbrook came flat out and said he wanted out. So what do you think Harden wants to do? Sit there and chill? No. So when I'm seeing, okay, the rumors about Harden, what made it real for me, at first when they said he turned down $103 million over 2 years, I'm like, nah, they didn't really offer him $50 million. And he said no. But Hudson found off of James Harden's Instagram the water bottle, him taking off the cap.
He said no cap. He said no cap. Where are we as a people in 2020 when a video of some guy taking the cap off a water bottle will send all of us into a frenzy? And Keith, I'm going to let you finish, but Shams just comes out. We talked a lot about Pooch. We talked a lot about Scoop. We talked a lot about Woj. Shams comes out and he says the Rockets and Wizards have discussed a deal centered on Russell Westbrook for John Wall.
Okay.
According to him, there's no traction yet. The Rockets are seeking more assets. Sounds like a fire sale in Houston.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the Nets are going to be the beneficiary of that fire sale. And I'll take you back to other times when stars have decided, no, I don't want to play here anymore. Let's look at Kawhi Leonard. What did the Raptors have to give up to get Kawhi Leonard? Not much.
Yeah, he was out.
Not much. He was out, and that was it. They didn't keep him
physically
somewhere he didn't
out
want to
hurt,
be. Like,
and then he wanted out.
Yeah. No, and the Nets are in, and other teams as well, but all the reports are saying he wants to be in Brooklyn. No other places have been mentioned from his point of view. The Nets are in a position where they can make this happen, and we have to give a shout out to our guy Pooch, the Nets insider. He's that dude. He's someone who, obviously, Keith, you've talked to a good deal.
Yeah.
And he's like the patron saint of Nets Twitter. This man is breaking all of the Nets news, and we have to give him absolute credit, because what he did was he threw Twitter back into a frenzy today. After all day we had heard, this might not happen. It might, the Rockets want to hold on to him. They want to get all these assets, what have you. But then our guy comes out and he throws cold water on all that. He says, and I'm just going to quote him here, sources around the league believe that there is a, quote, verbal agreement between the Nets and the Rockets that would bring James Harden to Brooklyn and create a super team with KD and Kyrie Irving. So absolutely shout out to our guy Pooch. Shout out to that reporting.
Poochio.
He went out there and did it. He's that dude on Nets Twitter, and he's got to be that dude on NBA Twitter, because where's the NBA looking? They're looking at Houston. They're looking at Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And where should you look if you're looking at Brooklyn? You look straight to @apooch on Twitter.
Pooch, it's our time, bro. All the work, all that time you put in, all the hustling, all the grinding, looking for opportunities, looking for gigs. Hey, make your own opportunity. I'm so pumped that you came back this week. And the first thing I said was, bro, it's time. And yeah, he's connected like that. He is one of the leaders of Nets Twitter. They always want to call out who the leader of Yankees Twitter is. Back in the day, that kind of died. But Pooch is one of the leaders of Nets Twitter. He's been doing this for a minute. Check out the Brooklyn Way pod. I kind of fell off on that. I need to get back on top of that pod. I'm not sure if he's even still putting out new episodes. I think he did stop for a minute, because Pooch also works in a school. He has another job, but he grinds at his real job and his side hustle. And Pooch, my guy, it's going to connect. We'll have Pooch on the pod. Definitely add that to the list of guests that we need to book. But yeah, with this Harden stuff, bro. All right, Daryl Morey, right? And if you listen to Talking Nets, I don't know if this is your first time listening to Talking Nets. I hope this is some people's first time. But if you listen to Talking Nets, we have been talking about the NBA, because, you can't just talk about the Nets. You got to talk about the whole NBA. And as the chips fall, you can start to see these things happening. So Daryl Morey, right, goes to Philly. Where did Harden's head coach go? Brooklyn. So when the rumors and stuff start swirling, it's like, okay, Harden interest in Philly. Well, Philly's not going to trade Ben Simmons. Okay, well, now he wants to team up with KD in Brooklyn. These rumors, yeah, it seems like they come out of thin air, but they come from somewhere. These guys are having conversations. So when Pooch says there's a verbal agreement, for me, I don't care if there was actual verbal agreement. Pooch is a credible source, and he's letting you know the conversations are being had. We are this close. This is rare air. And there's a bunch of haters out there talking about, oh, there's only one basketball. What are they going to play with 3 basketballs? Oh, let me guess. Kyrie's going to dribble all the time, and Harden can't play off the ball. KD, his Achilles. Literally, the NBA is shook right now. And fans of other teams that aren't Nets fans are shook right now, thinking, yo, the 3-headed monster that this team will have hand over the trophy. They're this close to putting together the super team of 2 MVPs, former scoring titles, guys that have done it, right? These guys are over 30. They're veterans in the game now. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Honestly, I'm kind of leaning more towards Serge Ibaka. But it is a fun time to be a Nets fan. I've been wearing Nets stuff all week. I've been talking the talk on Twitter, Talking Nets Twitter. Wear your jersey. I see you repping, wearing the jersey. I've been wearing my jersey, man, because you know what? Coming from Jersey, right? I tweeted the other day, yo, it's not 2009 anymore. There's more Nets fans out here than you realize, and the bandwagon, the bandwagon, it's getting full. But we're taking everybody that wants to come through, and I love it. If Harden wants to come here, now let's talk about that quickly. It's not in the notes, but I know you and I can talk about it off the top of our heads. If Harden's coming here, everyone must go. And I'm fine with that. As much as I love the old regime Nets, as much as I talk about Big J Allen, I talk about the tech guy with the jumper, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, that boy is smooth, that boy is cold, all that. Yeah, I will cherish those memories if James Harden is wearing a black and white number 13 Brooklyn jersey in 2 months. Like, what are you thinking, man? If, people are like, no way should Jared Allen be in the deal, or, oh, Karis isn't a star, they got to include Kyrie. Let me tell you this. I'm getting long-winded here before I pass it to Hudson. Kyrie came here with KD. They're not going to trade Kyrie to Houston, but everyone else is available. I'm talking, it could be Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Rodion Kurucs, throw Taurean Prince in there, and whatever picks you want, right? I think the title of this episode I'm going to make, this is not an NBA draft preview, because like we don't need to do an NBA draft preview. We're talking James Harden this week. Throw in that number 19 pick to get Harden as well. Go for it, Hudson.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Throw everything at him. And the one thing that I've seen from Nets Twitter is an understandable hesitance to go all in on something, including future draft picks. We've been scarred before. We're all scared it's going to happen again. But this isn't a washed KG. This is not 2013. This is not what the Nets are doing. This is James Harden. This is something else. This is next level. And to quote the one and only Stephen A. Smith, draft picks don't mean much when you're winning championships. They don't. They lose their value, obviously, if you're in the playoffs. And if you're winning the chip as, potentially the greatest super team ever put together is expected to do. If Harden goes to Brooklyn, they're expected. They are the odds-on favorites. If it's not them, it's a failure. We know where we're at.
Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares?
No,
Who
I don't.
Cares?
This is so
I
rare.
love them. I love those old guys. The reason that we're here. They are absolutely players that Brooklyn Nets should hold in their heart forever, because they got us to this point. These players that Sean Marks was able to find and drum up, they got us to this point. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have landed KD, Kyrie. We wouldn't even be in the conversation for James Harden.
It's a
here we are.
star-driven league, right? Someone tried to say to me, you can't get rid of those guys. You'll have no one on the bench. KD and Kyrie are going to ruin the team. Nah, what are you talking about? When the Lakers pulled off the heist last year, I'm sure there's people in the Lakers fan base that were like, oh, man, I hate LeBron. He's ruining the team. We're going to get rid of this whole team. LeBron is – look at the Laker fans now, right? A lot of these Laker fans were Kobe stans, so they hated LeBron. But LeBron came there, Magic got up out of there, and they knew what they had to do to bring AD there. Get B.I. out, get Lonzo out, get Josh Hart out. Send them whatever you want to send them. And if the season takes a whole year from October to October, we're going to be the champions the first season we play with LeBron and AD. Now, look at the Nets. They're trying to be champions the first season they play with KD and Kyrie. But whoa, we're not stopping there. Now, all of a sudden, Harden is on the table. And I'll transition into the next thing we're going to talk about, because if we don't land Harden, we're still good. Serge Ibaka is rumored to be out there on the table. And Kevin Durant, he's out here recruiting. He's doing his podcast. I love the energy from KD. Man, I'm glad I scrubbed my Twitter years back, because I was a huge KD fan. I had the Global Game 7s. I had a couple different pairs of KDs before he went to the Warriors. And when he went to the Warriors, I ain't going to lie, I definitely tweeted a snake emoji and might have said something like that, like everybody else was. But I ended up deleting that stuff before he came to the Nets. Now he's with the Nets. I'm like, hey, that's our guy. I can't wait to see him play. What do you think about him potentially recruiting Serge Ibaka? We've all seen that clip with them two in the kitchen. I forget what YouTube
KD
that
ate a
was from.
snake. KD ate a goddamn snake on Serge Ibaka's show. You don't eat a snake and expect there not to be something that he's getting back. They're boys. Keith, I love you. I don't know if you could get me to eat a snake. Probably not.
I don't play with snakes.
No, I don't mess with snakes. KD shouldn't mess with snakes, but he did for Serge Ibaka. there's a connection there. Obviously, we talked a lot about the Thunder, the 2012 Thunder. They want to win together. They want to get it done together. And I've been on the Serge Ibaka train for about as long as it's been a train. I think he's a perfect fit for the Nets. I think whether it's Serge Ibaka or someone at that 19 slot in the draft, putting all of the James Harden stuff to the side, that's a great team. That is if not the favorites, the second favorites to win the NBA championship. But let me tell you, if we get that done, I mean, what's stopping us? Like the James Harden, we love it. We're obviously, you said we're getting a little selfish. We're getting a little greedy. We should be. But even if we don't get him, and that would be sad, if he goes to the Eastern Conference, that's a tough look for the Nets. And it's unfortunate because we're going to go from the highest highs to the lowest lows. But Serge Ibaka, and this is before all the KD stuff, I put out a tweet on the Talking Nets account. He could take a $15 million pay cut and sign with the Nets for $5 million. The Nets have a loose $5 million at least to do some stuff with.
Yeah, and I saw you.
Why not?
I saw you tweeted on Talking Nets. We're trying to find a tweet because I just retweeted the voicemail. But you said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, so does Ibaka just sign on the spot for $5 million if the Nets land Harden? Like the veteran minimum, isn't the $5 million the veteran minimum?"
It's something like that. But if we don't pick up Garrett Temple's option, that's another $5 million.
Yo, Garrett Temple, you can get
Sayonara.
Garrett Temple up
Sayonara,
out of
Garrett.
here. I mean, we gave him that 2-year deal because we had to or whatever. I had high hopes for him. This time last year, I had high hopes for him, but I don't see a spot for dude on this team. And I will throw a tweet out there from our guy Scoop B, who was just on the show, because this is the first I saw from it. Toronto Raptors big man Serge Ibaka and Brooklyn Nets have strong mutual interest per source. It's sources season. I mean, everybody knows it. It is what it is. And last in this segment, what's Nets, right? This episode is not a draft preview, but let's talk about it as we transition into what's next. Who will the Nets take at 19? I threw some names in there: RJ Hampton, Jalen Smith, Desmond Bane. I think I saw, they talk about Sean Marks potentially going, global and drafting someone from Europe. I saw the name Leandro Bolmaro, shooting guard, strong forward from Spain. But I mean, this is how I feel about the draft, and I'll let Hudson speak on it because I know he's got some ties to Maryland, and he's a Jalen Smith guy. But I said it earlier, like, yo, I'm not worried about the draft this week because the Harden rumors, the Ibaka rumors, even the confirmed trade for Bruce Brown has washed the draft for me as a Nets fan. And as a Nets fan, there were plenty of drafts that I watched where we didn't have a pick. So I don't get pumped for the draft anyway. Like, I don't care about the 19th pick. Now, don't get me wrong. There's players like Nikola Jokic, who was drafted like 40th overall or something like that. You can get an all-star player at 19. And I feel like this is a deeper draft and a weird year where someone could fall to the 19th spot and you're like, oh, I forgot about that dude. And I think Sean Marks and the Nets are smart enough to go grab him. But I think this pick should be in a deal for Harden. Hudson, what are you thinking about the 19th pick?
Yeah, absolutely. Who cares if it's in a deal for Harden? I absolutely do not. Send it away immediately. But obviously, like we talked about, there is still a fair chance that doesn't happen. And so I think that it's only fair as a Brooklyn Nets podcast that, we just run down some quick names. I have some notes I can just put out. Let's call it the world's fastest draft preview. We gave Scoopy a minute, or he gave us a minute before he had to leave. Let Keith just give me a minute, and I'll let the fans know. I'll let the fans know some names to know. And I'm going to start off the top. My favorite player in this draft, bar none, Jalen Smith, former 5-star recruit out of the great city of Baltimore. I've watched him play since he was in high school. He is phenomenal. He is a 6'10" power forward / center. Played out of position last year for Maryland at center. Averaged more than a block and like a double-double a game. He was phenomenal. Oh, guess what? He also hit 38% of threes. He can slot in, like I've mentioned before, into that 4 slot with or without a Serge Ibaka on this team. He is someone who we can plug and play in, and he can potentially even run as a starter on this if they want to win a championship with him. I see no reason why he cannot. The sky's the limit for a player that can hit threes and hit block at 6'10". He's a big man, and he can get it done. We've talked about RJ Hampton on this podcast. He's a bouncy wing, developmental prospect. He probably wouldn't see too much time this season, but guess what? Everyone's complaining like, oh, you're not going to have a future if you give up all these picks. You know what? If we keep this pick, let's pick him up. Let's give him a future. He's a player. He played in New Zealand, obviously, so he's got that Sean Marks connection. He's a Texas guy, and we've liked some players out of Texas, obviously with Jared Allen. He's a fun player. He's a developmental player. I don't see him making a big impact on this team if they win a championship, but it's a name to know for the future. Sadiq Bey, a 3-and-D wing, something that the Nets need. He's an elite defender. Obviously, we just acquired Bruce Brown, so that need is lessened, but everybody loves an elite defender. I'm sorry. A Puccio tweet just popped up on my feed, and I think I'm going to have to cut myself off to read it.
Go for it.
Let's see. He's updated his story, and this is live breaking. It won't be live breaking for you listening to the podcast.
Puccio.
All right,
I'm looking too. Go for it. Bro.
Yeah, he's extended his article a little bit, Keith. I'll let you read through that so you can give us the synopsis after I finish my quick preview. I'm burning through it. Sadiq Bey, 3-and-D wing, elite defender. Looks like he might be a little bit of a reach to slip to 19. But if we can get it done, it's a great defender. He's a player that can make an impact on a good team. Cole Anthony, Carolina point guard, professional, good passer, New York connections. He's the kind of player, another one. If we're losing a point guard in a trade, which we still might regardless of getting James Harden, he's a good player to have on the bench. He can step in. He can hit open passes to players that are going to be open if he's running in a set without Kyrie, without maybe James Harden, who knows. Desmond Bane, the only note I gave for him was Joe Harris 2.0, 3-and-D wing, another one, great defender, the kind of player that the Nets would love to get if we cannot, for some reason, hold on to Joe Harris. And if this were a slow week, we would talk about how the Atlanta Hawks are interested in putting in a big deal for Joe Harris. But we got James Harden to talk about. Remember when that was news? Remember when that was in the notes?
Bro, yeah, I put that Chris Brown gif over the the Atlanta Hawks are prepared to, okay, the Atlanta Hawks can be prepared to offer Joe Harris. But notice when I was running through the names of hey, everybody must go. Did I say Joe Harris? Hell no, I didn't say
Absolutely,
Joe Harris.
No, you did not. Absolutely.
Broadway Joey? Joey Buckets? Nah, he was priority number 1. Sean Marks said that in the Steve Nash press conference. Priority number 1 is to re-sign Joe Harris. And looking at this Pooch article, I'll read this quick blurb. I think this is the only thing that I took from it. I think it's pretty much the same, though. While no details have emerged on what the Nets would give up, league sources believe the team would have to package the house, not Daniel House, the house, which would revolve around up-and-coming star Karis LeVert, plus the likelihood of players like Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, Nicholas Claxton. League sources also added that Brooklyn will have to surrender an array of first picks in the coming years for any of this to come to fruition. Houston, although reluctant to part ways with Harden, they prefer to send him to an Eastern Conference team, said one league official. The belief is that Harden will indeed get his way and land with the Brooklyn Nets in a blockbuster trade. Awesome. Man, I love it. I love it. We are close. We are this close to potentially landing James Harden and having the super team favored to win the NBA championship.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And just another shout out to Pooch. He is in a time that's been difficult for him. He's talked about on his Twitter before he took a little hiatus that it's been a difficult time for him being able to work his side hustle and his main hustle. But he's doing great work. He's got this gig with this new website that he put this article out on. Absolutely give it a read. It gives some insight into some other things that we might have to give up. But it really just increases the value of players that weren't mentioned in that trade, like Joe Harris, like my favorite player, TLC. And obviously, all the, Bruce Brown and the player that we just brought in. So think about those guys. You're saying the Nets aren't going to have any depth. I don't really know what you're talking about, because the Nets at this point, when you look at the Nets roster, they almost have too much depth to be able to fit people in.
There's 5 guys that play on the court and 8, 9 guys that really get minutes. We don't need 25 guys. I don't know where people come up with that either. But let's get into our last segment as we're close to an hour on this podcast. And it's a switcheroo. It's something different. Instead of what's on, because we all know what's on. We're not telling you what to watch. You already know what to look for. Instead of what's on, we're going to do what else. And what else is going to feature voicemails, fan questions, things from Twitter, Talking Nets fam. We're growing. Shout out to the people that have DM'd, that have reached out, that want to either join us, create content with us, do collab, crossover podcasts. We're going to get that done. First off, let's hit this voicemail and see. There's 2 voicemails from the same person. Let's play the first one. See if it maybe he says the same thing. I don't know.
Brooklyn, what's up, Keith? What's up, Hyde? It's DJ here, and I'm actually in a class seminar right now, but because of the news, I have to leave a voice memo. And just wanting you to know, if this trade goes down, I don't even know the assets that we have were enough for this. But if it goes down, I think I'm going to squirt. And take that as you will. It means everything you think it means. I just don't even know. I still can't believe it. I'm still waiting for the Woj bomb. I saw the Pooch tweet, and that validates it more than I thought it would, but I still need that 100% confirmation before I absolutely lose my mind. I'm still in like shock. I still don't even know what to do right now. I'm like losing my mind. I'm in a seminar, but probably should go back, but Jesus fucking Christ. I don't know what to do. I'm losing my fucking mind. All right, boys, you guys have a good one, and I'll be sure listening in to see what you guys have to say, because I don't even know what to say. Jesus Christ.
Let me just say, if anyone wants to come on the podcast as a producer and screen these voicemails, please send us a DM.
Hey, it is what it is. He sent that. So that
I
one
love
was
the energy, though.
That one was 1:11. Here's another one, 54 seconds. DJ, I don't know if you're doing a take 2, but I'm going to run it anyway.
Keith, Hud, what the fuck do we do? This is happening. I don't even know how to react right now. I'm still holding off until I see like the Shammer Woj bomb, but the Pooch tweet, this gives it way more validation than I thought. I don't even know what to think. I didn't even think the assets we have were enough for this, but oh my fucking God. I need to hear what you guys need to say, because I'm personally just at a loss for words. I already see people saying that it won't work, but the fuck? I don't even know. Well, I'll be listening in. I want to hear what you guys have to say, because personally, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'm losing my mind. Well, have a good one, boys.
DJ's going through it right now, just like we all are. It's funny. When that Pooch tweet broke, I actually was also in a class, and that class got put on mute. And we
guys
hopped on Twitter.
You guys are in digital class now, so it's easier to not give a fuck about class.
I love it. I love it, DJ. DJ said he was at a loss for words. Clearly not too much of a loss for words, leaving his 2 voicemails, but I love the energy. I love it.
I played both of them. There's 2. I don't know if he was doing a continuation or a take 2, but I like that energy. I know there's a lot of fans listening that feel the same way. I know there's a lot of fans.
I know I feel the same way.
That are like, DJ said he was going to squirt. I don't know if I feel like that, but I feel you, bro, as far as like not knowing what to do. I'm in the office just laughing as I'm like about to leave to go home to record Talking Nets. I'm like, yo, what kind of world are we living in? I'm sitting here with haters telling me that it will never work with KD, Kyrie, and Harden. And the reality is we might land Harden to play with KD and Kyrie. I don't know. It's a great time for Nets fans. And the next part of this segment, what else, comes from our guy, Nets Head. Nets Head is a true Nets fan and a true Talking Nets fan. Part of the Talking Nets fam sent him a T-shirt. He was one of the first guys to write us a review. So this is a perfect time to plug it before I usually do. Write us a review the pod. Take a screenshot of yourself and send it to us. When your review pops up, I'll send you a T-shirt. We got stuff. shop.johnboymedia.com. We got stuff, bro. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm rocking the Talking Nets hoodie. Hudson designed the logo. He's got one. Like, write us a review. We need reviews on the pod, and we'll send you something. But back to Nets Head. Nets Head writes, Could you guys share a story about when you knew you were going to be a diehard fan? Personally, I became a diehard fan during Brook Lopez's rookie season in 2008. I was a fan before the 08-09 season, but it was amazing with Brook's emergence and VC being VC. I've been thinking about it, and I think I can narrow it down to a single magical game. It was November 21st, 2008, where Vince did things I didn't know were possible. If you haven't seen it or don't remember, I highly recommend this clip. And he even sent the link, and I watched it, and I faintly remember. So I'll go first because in like 2007, I was in Virginia, and like we couldn't watch Nets games in Virginia. I went to school at James Madison, and then I transferred, and I got back here in 2008, 2009, and I was able to watch the Nets again. And if you guys remember, this is the Nets that were, post the finals, and the Nets were competitive, and they had all-stars like Vince Carter, whatever. They had better players, but man, that 09 season was rough. That 09 season was like, yo, if you're a Nets fan, you don't wear Nets stuff. You don't claim the Nets because we were all-time bad. We were laughing stocks of the league. We opened up and lost like the first 10 games, and it was like, man, the Nets might not win a game. Like, it was bad. So, we were ducking. Shout out to B-Lo, Brook Lopez. I loved him back then. I still love the guy now with the Bucks. I mean, them calling him Brooklyn Brook. I've always been a B-Lo fan. He's exactly 1 month older than I am. But for me, when I became a Nets fan was around the finals because I grew up rooting for Jordan like every other kid. I grew up a Bulls fan, jumping on the bandwagon from age like 5 to 10. And then around the early 2000s, when the Nets went to the finals, and it's like, okay, I'm not a fan of Jordan anymore because Jordan is done with the Bulls. I started to pick up more Nets merch. I was a big Kobe fan and a Shaq fan and Lakers fan, but they're across the country. I never bought Lakers gear. I never had my mom buy me any Lakers gear, and I had a decision to make. When the Lakers were playing against the Nets in the finals, who am I going to root for? I'm going to root for the Nets. And that was a crushing loss to take, even to, Kobe and Shaq and that Lakers team. It was a crushing loss to take. But from that point on, I was like, I'm a Nets fan. I'm rocking with the Nets. The Nets are going to be good. I mean, we fell from that level we were at. But that's when you guys see me rocking the Vince Carter jersey, I got that around that time. When you see me rocking the Jason Kidd jersey, I got that around that time. I can't remember an exact moment, but I know it was not in victory. It was the Nets getting swept by the Lakers in the finals, where I was like, whatever. We made it this far. There's not that many teams. I'm from New Jersey, so all we had was the Devils and the Nets. Those corny-ass football teams don't rep our state. So I started wearing Nets gear. I started wearing those jerseys, and I remember this moment. I have the picture somewhere. It was picture day at school, and I was like picking out clothes, and my mom had to approve what I was going to wear, and I decided that day I was going to wear my double XL because back in 2003, you wore your jerseys big. I decided that for picture day, I was going to be immortalized in a white Nets jersey, Jason Kidd, that said Nets Nets on the front, and I'll find that pic for proof somewhere. But from that point on, having that picture up like in my house and in the yearbook, it's like, okay, that solidifies, this kid is a Nets fan. He's into the Nets. And I've been rocking ever since. Hudson, go ahead and share the story because you probably have a little bit more of an interesting story of how you became a Nets fan or how you took to the Nets, because you didn't grow up in New Jersey. You probably didn't go to Continental Airlines Arena. You probably didn't go to East Rutherford because you're 19. It didn't exist when when you started probably being able to go to games and stuff. So let us know.
Yeah, my story is a little less happy than yours, even with those finals losses. When the Nets moved to Brooklyn, I decided, okay, I'm going to become a Nets fan. I was a kid, and I was born in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn for a little while, and I was like, you know what? The Knicks suck. Hate the Knicks. Really just can't stand Knicks or Knicks fans. That has continued until this day, and it will continue for the rest of my life. And I was looking, and I was like, all right, we got a team in New York. I don't really follow the NBA as closely as I'd like to. I don't really have a team. Obviously, I watched the Lakers. I watched the teams that were good. I liked young KD. It was all good, all great energy. But I was like, you know what? They're moving to the city that I was born in, the town I was born in. And I was like, all right, I'll pick it up. But when I became a diehard Nets fan is probably the saddest story anyone's ever heard, because it was draft night 2013, and the trade happens. And we know which trade I'm talking about. And I said, all right, the Nets are winning a chip for the next 6 years. The Nets are gonna six-peat. Let's go. And I bought a jersey and I did the whole thing. And I was so into it, and I was so thoroughly crushed just year after year after year after year. And that kind of, it was an interesting introduction to being a hardcore diehard Nets fan. And it was tough. The 2016 season, I waned a little bit. I've been putting out tweets from Talking Nets, looking at old Nets teams and thinking about how far we came. The 2016 Nets with Quincy Acey and Jeremy Lin, I was like, yeah. Now we're not that, and I'm really happy about that. And man, I'm just thinking back to those bad years, those tough years with no draft picks, and I'm just saying once again, thank you to Sean Marks. In Marks we trust. And man, it just feels good to be at the top.
So now I have a second story, and I know I talk too much, but I told the story of how I became a New Jersey Nets fan when it really clicked for me, because I boycotted the team when Jay-Z was talking, I'm moving the Nets to BK, ball so hard, even before that, he said, when I bring the Nets, I'm the Black Branch Ricky. And I'm like, this dude is going to take our franchise and bring him to Brooklyn, and they're going to be second fiddle to the Knicks. I can't rock with this. I boycotted the first year. I was like, I'm not watching the Nets. I don't care about basketball. They took our team. And I think that was 2011. No, that was 2012, the first year that they were in Brooklyn. And then my fiance, who she's not into basketball, she's into me. She knew that I was a New Jersey Nets fan, and she knew that I took a year off and had heard me talk about the Nets. But then the next year, the Nets got competitive, or the Nets were competitive, and they got into the playoffs. So for my birthday is May 1st, and I have the towel here. It says round 1, game 5, April 29th, 2013.
Would have been versus the Bulls, right?
Yes, sir. Blackout in Brooklyn. Let's see if they can see this on YouTube in the camera. I have the towel that they gave out, to all the fans coming to the Barclays Center. And it was my first game ever being there and seeing everybody in the black jerseys. I had my black Darren Williams jersey on. It was so dark in the arena, the way the lights were set up. And you guys know in the Barclays Center, if you go all the way up to the top, we had nosebleed seats where it's you're looking down on the court, almost like you could fall forward. It's steep. But I was just loving it. And I was talking shit to Bulls fans. This is that Bulls team that had Nate Robinson, D Rose, Taj Gibson, maybe young Jimmy Butler. I don't even remember. Joakim Noah. I think they lost that game because I took some pictures outside, with my arms spread, just happy to rep Brooklyn. And then from that point on was when I became a Brooklyn Nets fan. That's when I was back on board with the Nets. I remember I made the fan cave in 2014, and my homies from Chicago were talking about that series. And they're like, you're not really a Nets fan. And I'm pulling up pictures and stuff. And then, the next year I went to the United Center and saw the Nets. I got to find that picture because the Yes Network actually retweeted me because I was literally the only Nets fan in the arena in 2014 for that game. But, yeah, that's a little bit about us and how we became Nets fans. If you're listening to this, you can send us a DM just like that. That's how Netshead got his question answered on the pod. Shit, we want to hear from you. Call the voicemail. Tell us when you became a Nets fan, whether it was the New Jersey Nets or Brooklyn Nets. Right now, if you became a Nets fan this week, I'm fine with that. Right now is a great time to be repping the Nets. All are welcome. Come one, come all. It's time to wrap this podcast up before we hit 1:15. Hudson, you got anything else?
Man, let's just have some fun, Keith. We're going to be coming back recording tomorrow after the draft or the day after that in the morning. I love it. This is probably one of the most hype, I've ever been for a podcast. Obviously, we had a great guest. Shout out to Scoop for coming on. That's awesome. It feels like a year ago with how long this podcast has gone. Yeah. But, man, it's time for the Nets to be the best. And I'm just so hype about it. And you should be too. If you have ever considered, going all in on the Nets, or, if this is your first time listening, and I'm sure it is a lot of people's first time listening, you're welcome. And, like he said right in the middle of the episode, this is a podcast, by fans for the fans. And if you want to be involved, hit us up. Just, send us a DM, call in twice, say you're going to squirt. I don't care. I love it. just bring the right energy and just keep this momentum going.
It's history in the making, man. When we win the championship and we, have a parade in New York, man, there's so much to happen until then. But like, this is just fun creating and, connecting with fans. I made the Nets Twitter list. A bunch of people hit us up. I added them to the list. Shit, we follow back. I know our followers on Twitter, like the ratio is like double the people following us and us following. But like this week, I've been following people back because it's about community, and we're not going to be able to go watch the team in Brooklyn next month when it starts. Watching the game online on Twitter is the way. We did some live streams last year with the Yes Network. I'm going to reach back out to Yes, see if they want to do something like that. I did some live streams with Matt Brooks and Brian Egan from the Glue Guys. We're going to do stuff like that. It's all about the online Nets Twitter fam community, Talking Nets fam. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Talking Nets. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at Talking Nets. Also follow John Boy Media. That's who produces and presents this podcast. Really, I produce and present it, but I'm an employee of John Boy Media. Hudson is an affiliate and a content creator from John Boy Media. He's in school, though, so we can't hire him full-time yet. But, yeah, make sure you guys are following us across the board. You heard DJ call and drop 2 voicemails. There was another person that called the line and didn't say anything. When you call, you should hear, like, a quick message. It should be my voice. Just call and say anything, literally. Shout out to DJ. He just called and said what he felt. That number is 201-870-0461. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. If you like what you heard, tell a friend to tell a friend. Make sure you rate the podcast 5 stars and write that review. Writing a review gets you a free shirt. We give out merch. If you write us a review, I will literally send a shirt to your doorstep. It's been done multiple times. And that's all we've got. And I've been signing off saying that we would get back into the Barclays Center, but I got the info, and most likely that's not going to happen until, who knows, postseason playoff time. But we close every show the same way. Maybe we'll get some online chants together where everybody says, "Let's go Nets, Brooklyn."
We go hard, oh, hard, oh.